And we're back. Thank you for the introduction again, Jess. And so, for those of you joining at home, both of you, welcome.
Well, one of them's here now.
One of them's here.
Yes.
Dang it, there's only one. This is the parent panel, part 2. We're going to revisit some of what we talked about the first time around, but we are going to try to incorporate some new learning in for the parents that are listening, so you get a balance of some of what was asked in the first panel and some fresh new questions for our panelists. I'll start by introducing my panel, Tahid, Luba, and John. John is our elder statesman, 14-year parent, 4 kids. Not just a kid that had really bad grades and stayed for 14 years.
Well, maybe a little bit of that.
Maybe a little. Luba, her son is now in his 2nd year, so we have a 1st-year parent and a 14-year parent, so we have a nice balance and juxtaposition. And to meet your...
I'm in the middle. This is the 2nd year.
There we go. And I myself am a 3rd-year parent. My daughter's going into her 3rd year on the team. So we'll start with a few of the questions that we asked last time around, and we'll try to make it look like they've never been asked these questions before, so they'll be as spontaneous as possible. Dean, I'll start with you. When Anushka came home and said, I'm going to be on a robotics team, what was your reaction?
It was actually both. A little bit of surprise, right? But then a little bit expected also, because Anushka, as I said before, that she had a background in when she was in the middle school. She was a part of the XIQ, right? I thought that will finish there, right? High school is kind of like more serious area, right? So when she came in, it was kind of surprised, but then I kind of figured out that, you know what, staying with these kids, right? Being a part of something, right? Will definitely push her towards something better, right? It cannot be like something different. It's always good to be a part of the team.
Now, Anushka didn't join in grade 9.
Right.
She joined in grade 10.
Right.
So there was a little bit of a gap. So she went from being on an elementary team in grade 7 and 8 at Eastdale.
Right.
Took a year off and then came back into the fray. What's your take on that? Was it something that she, I think, needed, or what was behind that?
It was kind of like I would say just lost in translation, right? Jumping from middle school to high school, that was a bigger area. A lot of people, right? A lot of things. Which subject to choose? When you're in the middle school, you don't worry about those things, right? Yep. So when you actually think about all those things, all those business, I think it was somehow lost, right? But in the middle of the year, she kind of came back to me that, hey, we have a team here also, right? And I don't know why I didn't join, right? It somehow didn't happen. So definitely next year, right? And it was spot on.
That's interesting. It's almost like when she got to through grade 9 and then realized, oh, I will benefit from this if I participate. Right. I didn't think that I would. Is that kind of what you're...
It's kind of like that, kind of like that, right? And you see, there is not much of a movement happened till almost the build, like the actual like new season open, which is January, right?
Yep.
So what happened is the school started in September, so before she knows that there's a strong team, there's almost 3-4 months gone, right? And then the new team, new people, and I don't know whether they can join that time or not. She just took some time that I will actually start from the fresh year. Nice. That's what happened actually. Okay.
Luba Gordon comes home and says, I want to be on a robotics team at OP. What's your reaction?
I was a little bit surprised. He's more of an athletic student, so coming in home and saying he wants to go on to robotics, I really wasn't sure what to say. I supported him, I asked him some questions, and he's really enjoyed his first year.
It's exactly the same answer she gave the first time around. So
I really tried.
So he suddenly comes. What do you think led him to suddenly go from an athletic trajectory into a robotic trajectory? What caused that change, do you think?
I'd like to say that he wanted to experience some new things. Starting in high school, that's a different, very different from elementary school. So trying some different types of activities. He went to Memorial School, which they have a lot of sports activities. Their robotics team was quite new, so it wasn't very developed. So I think letting himself get into something different than what he's used to. Maybe it was just something that he wanted to try.
Yeah, stretching himself. He's already
Yeah.
in the new surrounding. He decided he was going to push himself a little
Yeah.
outside his own comfort zone.
Yeah, I encouraged him to try out as many new things in high school. It'll just help him grow as a person. He'll meet new people that have similar interests or different interests that would enrich his own life in different ways.
John, you have a very different answer because your son Ian was on the very first 2056
As a grade 9
as a grade 9 student
yes.
in a brand new team, rookie team, 14 years ago.
Right.
So initially your reaction to Ian joining, and then maybe later on in your conversation when you get to your third child or your fourth child coming home,
Sure.
the differences maybe.
Well, and in between all that, there was a second child, and actually I'm going to focus on Evan for a moment. My oldest son, Ian, was very arts-based. Evan was much more science-based. So Ian being on the team, I think he did it mostly because he had experienced it at his public school. It was a core group of friends that he already knew, so that was sort of easy peasy. And we started off as a first-year team, just walking into this, crawling into this. We didn't have any expectation. But for Evan, he actually had to make a decision. He had to make a decision that he wanted to join a team, and he wanted to join a team that his brother was on. And sometimes there's friction between siblings, but also there's different expectations of, oh, you're the little brother, or in the case of my two daughters, you're the younger than. And I think what's important is, however the child decides to join the team, and whenever the child decides to join the team, that it become their team, not their siblings' team,
Right.
and certainly not their father's or mother's team.
Right. And we touched on this in the first panel, but there are a lot of siblings that do come onto the team. Some of them maybe coerced, maybe influenced. But what's that like for the second sibling or even the third sibling to come along after they've had an older brother or sister on the team?
Sure, so it's generally terrible. It's terrible because they actually come into the team with a certain expectation, a certain experience that ends up being manifestly different when they're actually on the team. It's one thing to go around and collect buttons or trade t-shirts or put on the swag and just attend the event. It's quite a lot different to actually go in meeting after meeting and day after day and hour after hour and actually contribute to the team. So usually the second, third, and even fourth child has an expectation of what it will be, but they are also coming in with a fair bit of baggage as well. So again, making the team their own team,
Yeah.
not just doing chairmans because their brother or sister did chairmans or being on drive because their brother and sister did it, but experimenting and finding their own way in is absolutely critical. And I will give props to Ty and to Stan for creating an environment that allows the children to find their own way in. And oftentimes they know, because especially for siblings, they usually know somebody already on the team, which means that they have a guide into the team, which is usually not their older brother or sister, so that they know they can sort of hang out with somebody else and then develop that skill set, and then by that point, create a comfort with the team that allows them then to explore new and exciting realms.
Both John and Tahiti, your student, your child, were in elementary programs, and so it was something of a natural progression to move into a high school program. Not the case with Gordon. He hadn't done it at an elementary town. Do you think that had any impact? Did it matter in the long run, or you know, it didn't have any impact at all on his participation on the team, his maybe acceptance into the team, or any of the roles that he's ended up playing?
I don't think it really mattered too much that he wasn't on a team. Maybe his startup was a little bit slower, but once he got in, he was there right after school until 9:30 during build season. He was there every Saturday. So he found his way into where he felt he fit in the best. So I don't think it was a prerequisite, in our case at least.
If you had to go back and you had the opportunity to have a team up Memorial in advance, do you think that Gordon's outcome would have been changed by having an elementary-based team in advance of going into high school?
Well, Memorial does have a bit of a robotics program, which Gordon chose not to be part of.
Okay.
But that's difficult to say. I do have a younger son who will be joining the robotics team next year, and he has taken be interesting to know next year
Okay.
how his exposure to the elementary school robotics program translates. So maybe that's a question for next year.
Awesome. So you heard it, folks, here
Or
first.
the year after.
Or
One of the
year
questions
after.
on
That's
next
right.
year's panel or the year after will be Luba's experience. So
And
you're
she'll be
hearing-
the 14-year
No,
parent.
no, I'm done.
And Gandalf the Grey, now white, will be gone.
Yes. John's nickname Gandalf. John, because you have the experience of 14 years, could you describe for new parents what the season actually looks like? Because we're using terminology up here about build season and off season and da 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 da. Can you kind of timeline from the beginning of school? Because a lot of parents, I think, their kids join the team in September and then nothing happens.
Yes.
Because the season doesn't actually start proper until later. So can you kind of go through what you would describe to a new parent as the structure of our season right through till
Sure.
off season again?
Sure, so there are at least 4 seasons, maybe even 5 seasons.
Right.
The first season is the season we're in now. It's a pre-season. It's a time where experienced students can mentor the younger students. It's where kids can learn basic skills, get basic certifications, learn about the team, learn about what it means to be a member of a team. And the team meets once a week, every Tuesday. But it also gets involved in some team building exercises. So it gets involved in recycling drives, it does some fundraising, it does some outreach into the community. And this provides a really good way for especially grade 9 and 10 students or first year students to become acclimatized to what the first world is all about. Then just as soon as we finish the winter break, we get immediately into the build season. The build season starts in the beginning of January. You have 6 weeks to learn a game, figure out how you're going to strategize your way into that game and build a robot. Then we have competition season, and then we have finally off season. And off season, our team has competed for a number of years at IRI. It's an invitational Indianapolis,
Indiana
Indiana Robotics Invitational, thank you. And that's both an exciting time and a relaxing time. You're competing against the best teams in the world who've been chosen specifically for not who they say they are, but who they actually have been.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows you, though, when you're the best of the best competing against the best of the best, it actually becomes much more relaxed. And it's just a fun time. It's actually also where you get to meet other parents that you've been chatting with and sitting with in the stands. We got to know each other, Tweed and I, just by driving down to Indiana, and that's where the relationships between the parents, but also between the kids, really gets strengthened.
So the off season, as important, and maybe something to highlight with parents, because I think when they perhaps get to the end of June and school's out, they go off. But there is a lot of weight, and I've experienced it as well, and I think all of us have this.
Well, and you and I, we've both had students that have gone to Mexico
This is
in the off season.
Yeah.
So there are lots of opportunities to do things in the off season, and in the off season, that also allows a kid just to be a kid, and just to get a job, and just to maybe take some courses to get an advance into the following year, or just do something completely, utterly different than robotics.
True. The first year as a robotics parent, you're all going to have some different ideas on about what were some of the highlights, what were some of the low spots, starting with Tahib.
Well, there's not much of a low spots. The thing happened is that there's suddenly a lot of business there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like John explained to you, it's kind of like a wave, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you start the school in September, then you see your kids are actually studying, not doing much, like only studying, right? Focusing on stuff. Then suddenly it's the January and the game starts, and you see the kids are in the school from 8 a.m. till almost like 10 p.m., right? And you're thinking that what will happen to the grades, right? What will happen to their homeworks, right, and stuff like those, right? And then you kind of see that slowly they start to work around each other as a team, right? And as well as they're building the robots, they're doing everything. They're finishing their homework, they're helping each other, whoever is weak at something. they're actually getting help from the stronger person, right? And it is kind of slowly it started to be a team even outside the team, right? And that's actually the strong point of the team, right? I will actually go back to the last question you had just for a little bit. That you see, when you are in the build season or in the on season,
Yes.
right? If I can say, you get help from everyone. You get help from the school. You get help from parents. You get all the parents, right? All the kids, right? But the moment it comes to the off-season events, it's like few of us actually, or few of the parents actually organizing most of the stuff, right? That how will actually take the kids, right? And then if the kid is going with some other parents, you have to have that faith in them that they will be in the good hands, right?
Yeah.
So it is actually a team's thing. It's not like a single phase thing, or it's not only the 2-3 bright student and everyone is not bright. It's not like that.
Right.
You are only strong as it's your weakest link, like you say, right? So you help it, they help each other, right? And then they become strong as a team, right? Not only in the team, even the outside team, right? So that is the strong point I actually, like I saw that they are actually building in them, right? Supporting each other, right? And then organizing time-wise everything. Time management is a very important thing there, right?
So definite highlight is that you start to see the team supporting each other, and you see your own student developing critical time management. And we talked about that in the last panel, just that time management is probably the single most important skill that our students need to develop, and you start to see that during the season progress. Interesting that you go back to the season outlay. I'm sorry I didn't give you two an opportunity to pitch in on the seasons. But it is, you were talking about that the parents take a more active role in the off season, which then leads to more cohesiveness amongst those parents. So there's a lot that parents can do, and we have to push ourselves, because you were saying before in the first panel, initially you just kind of dropped off your kid and went home, and then came and picked them up at the end. So we wanted to encourage our parents to walk into the building and go to the competitions and see what's going on, even if it's a little intimidating, which, like, I grow flowers for a living, so I know nothing about robots, and to go in and go, what the heck is all of this? It's a big learning curve, but when you stick with it and you can see all these different components, it really becomes critical that the parents are invested and involved. And so we do encourage parents to stick with it and to get in there and do the off-season stuff and to pick that up. Louis, your first season, kind of the pre-season, the build season, the post-season. What were your thoughts? What were your experiences?
At the start, I found it very overwhelming. There was so much information that came back to the parents. You know, fill out these forms, provide this, order that. There was a lot that came back. So that was, I thought, how are we going to do this? Because I don't really know much about the world of robotics. And then after, asking some parents about how do I navigate this, then you quickly realize that just as the kids support each other, the parents support each other. If you don't know something, ask me. If you need direction, ask. If we're at an event and there's parking vouchers at McMaster that you don't know about, you go and get those. So everyone is there to provide information. It's a very close group of parents, just like the kids are.
Yeah, so it's almost like you're talking about the team within the team within the team.
Exactly.
There's almost a parents team that develops in some cases.
Yeah.
We have our formal steering committee that is a more formalized structure for that. So folks watching at home, make sure you have a parent steering committee. Top job. Did your student have a struggle in their first year or beyond their first year at any point in your 14 years or in your first year? Did they have a struggle emotionally, socially, academically, and was there an intervention on your part that you provided? I'll leave your answer to last, but I'll start with Tahid. If there was that intervention that you had to do with Anushka because you saw something happening that you as a parent had to do.
Like she said, that it was overwhelming. There are a lot of things happen there, right? The thing that I miss is I I used to spend more times with her
Mhm.
that I actually didn't get,
Yes.
right? But then, like I said, that slowly you become a part of it also,
Right.
right?
Right.
Academically, like I said before, they help each other, right? And as they become friend, it's more than, it's not only the friends from the same class.
Yeah.
There are junior friends, there are senior friends, like some actually helping with the homework, right? So that you are academically kind of getting there, right? Socially, there will be someone who's like, you know what, if you have these issues, talk, right? You know what, in the social any issues, they are actually more help they get by themselves or within themselves, then they come to us and say that, you know what, I'm in trouble.
Mhm.
They don't want to sell it to us. So those are the things that there, of course, right? So it's again come back to the point that the definition of the team, right? It's like, it can be like one helping each other, right? Or all of us, all of them helping each other, we are helping each other. It's easy, it gets easy slowly, it doesn't actually, it is easy.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there wasn't a big intervention on your part.
Not
What
much.
you saw was that the team structure itself supported your child in a way that you didn't really have to, because they were helping each other with their academics and their time management and other
It's
skills.
kind of like you have to let them flow like a water, and they actually find their way out.
See, this is why I have to heat on the panel, because he uses those beautiful
Yeah.
illustrations. A struggle on the first year, I mean, we talked about the kind of the overwhelming information that's coming at you, and then simultaneously you're getting all this information, and then it's September, nothing's happening. So you're getting a little overwhelmed. But when the plow was dropped and we're out there building and the actual season starts, was there an intervention that you had to have to support your student, or what was that experience like?
The biggest challenge was time management, wanting to do everything in life as used to, but the robotics build season is so intense that there just isn't enough time to do all of your athletics, all of your previous lifestyle.
Right.
So just, revisiting every so often, are you having enough social time? Are you having enough time for your homework? Are you resting enough? It's just constantly revisiting that so that there doesn't become a time where something is lacking so much that it causes a problem. So it's just staying on top of it rather than intervening too much.
John?
I can answer the question in a very roundabout way.
All right.
And that is to say, I was at a conference a few days ago, and it was an early childhood educator. And the woman said, everybody close your eyes and imagine your best moment as a kid. And soak it all up. And we had 2 or 3 minutes to actually really think about this. And what were you seeing? And what were you smelling? And who were you with? And every single person, after she said, how many people had parents in that story? They went 0. Not a single person in a 150-person room had a parent in that story. And I think my answer to your question then is that if there are any interventions, it's usually between children. And they seem to self-guide one another. They help one another. It really is a team. And what I also find is that the longer the kids are on the team, and the more involved they are in the team, the more they then start to learn from and get guidance from other members of other teams. And so what's been very interesting over the years is seeing how those relationships develop so that they learn from one another. And it's not just Hamilton School Board staying with Hamilton School Board, it's other key teams or other PAR teams throughout the province or even around the world. And some of the relationships that they learn by going to Mexico or by going to IRI, by going to Worlds, by going to some of the district championships and seeing amazing teams, is that they learn from one another. So chairman's teams help other chairman's teams, drive teams help other drive teams, pit crew help other pit crew. And that's not just I need a wrench, I need a this, I need a that, but to actually help personally as well, because the kids recognize that these kids are going through the same thing I'm going through at the same time, and I'm going to go to them for help, so that those students can actually help guide them in a way that parents cannot.
Nice. And it's interesting that you mentioned, just to kind of an aside, the networks that the kids develop that go beyond the team, even beyond the school.
Beyond the country.
Beyond the country.
Cayman Islands and Ireland.
Right, so our children are still communicating with kids that they met from the Cayman Islands and Ireland, through their experience with FRC. Phil, when we were at the FTC event, I brought my daughter there, and all of a sudden we're in downtown Toronto, we're in North York, and there's these kids walking up to her, hey, Emily, how does she know all of these people? Like, I know no one. I knew Phil, that was it.
But you knew Phil,
that was all. But the networks that they are developing, and we don't even really know, in a good way, that they're building these connections outside of school, city, district, province, country, because it is such an international event. I mean, there were teams coming up from Israel wanting to learn from us last year. We had a team from Australia come here last year that wanted to learn from us. And that is a typical experience for not only a team like ours, but all teams have the potential to experience that as well.
Well, and even today, there are 150, 200 people in this building, and we are learning from one another, we are sharing information.
Yeah.
There are other teams that do other off-season events, and there's a lot of online information as well. I know that your daughter and my youngest have also been at an event for girls in robotics in Toronto. It was hosted in part by Team 1241. So again, it's not just learning, but it's learning girls with other teams, which can't help but help.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, I want to talk about gracious professionalism. Everybody is familiar with gracious professionalism. It is a term that is thrown around first a lot, but for a parent just joining, you might think, what is gracious professionalism? GP, as we refer to it, us that have been around for a while. In your own words, what would you explain to a new parent? What is gracious professionalism? So, Luba, I'll throw that to you, and you can actually just say, I don't know how I would do that. That's okay. That's a good answer too. But how would you explain gracious professionalism as a concept? Because it's thoroughly embedded in FRC. How would you explain that to a new parent?
I would say that it would be to encourage yourself and your child to put your best foot forward respectfully to anyone that you're encountering at any of the competitions or at the events. Be your best self to everybody.
That's actually a really good answer. Tahib?
You see, the first year when I was in the competition, I saw that there was a thing. Whenever the competition, like actual game starts, it's 90 seconds, 120 seconds, whatever it is, the actual game starts, there is no one walking in front of you. Everyone sits down, right? So that the people from behind can see, right? Everyone is cheering, but no one is blocking your view, right? And even when they're screaming for their team, there is a way they're actually doing it. The way they're doing it is, you can see that it's not actually bothering you, it's not disturbing you. They're not throwing stuff at us, right?
Yeah.
And that is one of the things I actually see, and I actually ask my daughter that, you know what, I'm not used to it, this. Whenever there's a game, you have to fight for your team. And he's like, no, this is professionalism. I'm like, oh, okay, so what is that? And he's like, you know what, our teacher told us, our team told us that, you know what, you have to respect each other, you have to support each other, professional, right, and very graceful, right? And I kind of, it's not like we didn't know that, but I didn't expect it from a high school team, right? That was really nice. I kind of find out it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
I think gracious professionalism is the one key value of FRC robotics that I wish would be disseminated throughout the world. We need more gracious professionalism in our professions, in our politics, in our communities, in our neighborhoods. It is about raising all of the boats. It's about us learning from one another. It's about cooperation. There's a healthy competition there too, but I'm winning not because you are losing, I am winning because you have actually allowed me to excel. It's about laddering, one on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other. And I think I experienced gracious professionalism most profoundly on this team when the streak ended. We had won every single regional competition that we had ever competed in for year 1 and year 2 and year 3 and year 4 and year 6 and year 8 and year 9. And here we are now in year 10. We have never, ever lost. It was unfathomable. And then we did lose. And we lost in the 3rd match, a tiebreaker match. If the game had been 2 seconds longer, we would have tied or even won. But we didn't tie and we didn't win, we lost. And as soon as we lost, there was this magnificent cheer for the winning team. And then all of a sudden, everybody realized what had just happened. And there was this quiet. And then the cheer rose again, and the second cheer was for the streak, was for 10 years of doing our best. And it was a celebration of a job well done. At IRI this summer, I had the pleasure of seeing gracious professionalism perform a second time just absolutely brilliantly when Team 330, again, a world-class team was folding. And they decided to end well, they decided to end at IRI. And when they had played their final match, everybody in the whole building stood up and gave them a standing ovation. And that was just so amazing because, again, they had contributed so much to the team, so much to those students, so much to the whole league, and so much to the world of FRC that everybody wanted to celebrate that. We were part of that. That was a moment in history that was just wonderful.
Yeah. Do you think that there are times when our gracious professionalism is challenged, and how do you as a parent respond to that when maybe you see the GP is kind of sliding a little bit? What conversation would you have with your child to kind of pick them back up? And I'll go back in reverse order.
Sure. So a time where GP was not evidence, but then was evidence quite quickly, was back in a certain year where we could have and perhaps even should have won the world championship. But our team and other teams playing on Einstein were hacked. There were communication issues. Ultimately, we did not win that year. That could have been the year. We could have been a contender. So not only was it not gracious, because another team actually prevented us from winning and prevented other teams from winning as well. But at the same time, the whole FRC community got behind us and got behind the entire, the entire game and did its best to improve things for the future. There are times, of course, where people make slip-ups. There's some bullying, there's some hostility, there's some online cyber stuff going on. But that usually gets squelched pretty quickly, and not always by the people that you expect. Sometimes, and I remember one example where it was a grade 9 student, and he was a proud Ticats fan, and he's ready to yay for the Ticats and boo the Argos. Well, he went into a competition and was booing the other team, and was very quickly hauled down and told, "We don't do that here." Who was that? That was Stan's wife's mother. You know, not somebody you expect that's going to be able to do that. And that kid not only learned from that moment, but became a core member of the team, went on to Mohawk College, became a student of distinction, and Chris Peck now works for one of our former sponsors of the team. And he learned in grade 9 something that he will never ever forget, taught by somebody that he probably didn't expect to learn from that day.
I remember in the stands in Detroit, I don't remember the scenario, but I remember one of our mentors, Shankar, who had flown over from London, England to help our team.
Yeah, specifically
that weekend. Who does that? Crazy. Something had happened on the field, and I remember him turning around, and he would, don't clap, we don't acknowledge that. Something, it wasn't very sportsmanlike, whatever had happened. But he was right on it.
Yeah.
We're not acknowledging that. That's not right. We're not going to give any heedance to it. And I think that was a great example of gracious professionalism as well. Any thoughts on some GP or how you support GP with your student?
I always say that whenever they lose, there is a little bit.
No, I was still
That
thinking of
wasn't
an
very
answer,
gracious.
so thank you.
I actually
He
give us some
recognized that I
time to
don't have an
think.
answer yet, so
Right.
that's,
I
that
didn't
was
want to
great.
rest
It's okay, no, you go ahead, Zahid.
So whenever you lose, we usually do not lose actually, right? But whenever we lose, there's a demoralization part of it, right? And then like, oh my god, right? And then we're like, no, you know what? Sometimes it's kind of like stepping back, right? So that you can jump again, right? It gives you that boost, right? So don't get demoralized, don't say, ooh, rather stand up, right? Because not every time, every dice will roll towards you with all sixes in it, right?
That's true.
There will be time when you will not actually see those, but still you have to stand still.
Yeah.
That is your professionalism, right?
Yes.
You know what? I'm still high because I'm one of the best, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not today, but tomorrow,
Yeah.
right? And that's how you actually build it. Simple as that.
And they're all great transferable skills too.
Oh, yeah.
What the gracious professionalism that hopefully our students are learning as part of the team is something that they carry with them when they go off into post-secondary education and then eventually into a career. And they spread that feeling of GP and that principle of being gracious and professional and not trying to, I don't know, am I wrong in saying that a fundamental of GP, John, is that we don't highlight the bad behavior.
Oh, absolutely.
And we always acknowledge when somebody has been hurt in some way, and we try to pay a lot of respect to the downsides and lift everybody up together. Luba?
I would say on the opposite side of that, acknowledging the positives. So, you know, if we're witnessing a game that has an amazing play by another team, acknowledging that too, because, you know, we might not be on a winning side sometimes, but if another team has made an amazing play or something, we're going to still acknowledge it because it is watching good sport.
Yeah. Like when a bot has fallen over, another team goes over and picks the bot up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, supporting another team and
because we have to remember that the team we're playing against in this match, we might be playing with in the next match.
Right.
So you always need to.
And we may pick them, but they may also pick us.
They may.
And I've been on the team long enough to know that the memory of this team, especially through the scouts, is to remember that some teams have played ungraciously in years prior, and even though they were performing well in a particular competition, we will not pick them because they're not a team player. Similarly, we've seen some teams that may not have played all that well in a particular competition, but we know that they've got the bones. We know that their drive team and their coach and their drive coach have said, yeah, we just have to fix this and we're going to be better.
Yeah.
And we've chosen them because we trust them.
Yeah. And to build on that, last year was Waterloo that we picked the First Nations team from Manitoba. And I remember when we made them part of our alliance, they thought that, I mean, the reaction from that team, this is a little team, we learned a little bit about them afterwards. In their rookie year, they were pulling pieces out of the local scrapyard to build their robots.
And dumpsters.
They had nothing. And
Including electricity, they didn't have.
Right.
Yeah. Kind of important.
They were just over the moon. Doesn't even describe the elation that team went through when we asked them to join our alliance. And that team went on
Absolutely.
to have a stellar season. The experience that those team members from Manitoba Island, can't pronounce the name of the band that they're with, but what an amazing opportunity that one small gesture, one small decision has this cascading effect that for many months and possibly years, beyond that. So all great.
And then they competed at the highest level at the World Championship for chairmans.
That's right.
And so they were one of the 3 finalist teams. And again, having kids that have been on chairmans for 2056, when we lost to them, there was some shock and there was some awe. But they were gracious in that defeat because they knew that there was a story that first had been taught
Yeah.
that we didn't know about yet. But we learned about it over successive competitions, and we cheered probably as loudly as anybody else because we were the first team to lose to them for chairman. So we cheered the loudest for them in Detroit.
That's great.
Even a small addition in the
Yes,
final when we lose, we actually stayed till the last, right?
Yeah.
We watched even the final and then we came out, right? And that's what you have to have. Like I told you that, you know what, you might lose, but you have to stay there, show your professionalism, show your graciousness, show your support to the team that are still playing,
Yes.
right? You cannot just pack your bag and leave the field just because you lose, right?
And as an example, in Detroit, of course, we didn't make it as far as we wanted to last season.
Or any season, doesn't
Well,
matter.
yeah, it was an interesting experience, but we stayed, the team
Yes.
stayed, and went on to support the team from Bishop Ryan, another Hamilton
Absolutely.
team that actually placed second.
Yes, very close.
And for us to be there to support a team that we have mentored in the past as
Yeah.
well, great experience. Okay, let's go to some of the rules, and we didn't get a chance to speak to this in the first panel, but within the team itself, there's a lot of different roles that our children may have the opportunity to enter into. Drive team seems to be, it's the one. Everybody wants to be on drive team, and it becomes almost an obsession, I think, for some students, and then maybe a disproportionate amount of pressure that they put on themselves to be part of the drive team. The drive team, of course, for parents that are just joining us, consists of the driver, the student that's actually going to drive the robot, the operator, which is a student that would operate components of the robot and assist the driver. The technician or programmer that would be programming the autonomous mode when the robot is moving by itself. And
The
our human player, which is actually a surprisingly important role for most of our competitions. The games require not only the robot, but a really astute human player. And Jeff, I have to say, Cass was just probably one of the best that I've seen. I loved watching Cass as human player last year. But so we've got all of these. We've got this core group that are the ones that are out there on the field, and they're the ones you see. And perhaps there's a thought that they get the glory and they get the this and that. But what are your thoughts on how the importance of the drive team, its status, and outside of the drive team, as kind of a follow-up question, what are some other really important roles that the students need to fill on the broader team? And maybe do you place importance on any of them above this drive team mythos that's kind of exists out there? So, John.
Sure, well, the drive team, you're right, does get a lot of the glory, it does get a lot of attention, and deservedly so. At the same time, you can't drive if you don't have a robot, and you can't have a robot if you haven't raised the money, and you can't, it just keeps going and going and going. The other thing, of course, too, is that Chairman's has nothing to do with the drive team.
Right.
So, in fact, Chairman's is a drive team in and of itself, but it just works on a completely different plane. Each of the responsibilities are equally important, and like Taweed said earlier, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So you can have an amazing drive team, but if you don't have financing, if you don't have parents, if you don't have food, if you don't have, you're not going to compete at a decent level.
What do you think is the most important? Could you pick a most important function on the team outside of the drive team? Is there something you can classify?
Well, I would say that the most important role is performed most admirably by two people, and that is Stan Hunter and Ty Holtzman.
Yeah.
They are the coaches, they are the captains, they are the backbone of the team. They have been with the team in a leadership position, in the leadership position, since its inception. And from both of them, and they are definitely the odd couple. They couldn't be more different as individuals, but together they work beautifully together. They don't step on one another's toes. They understand what each other's strengths are. They play to one another's strength. And from them, all of the students, all of the mentors, and all of the parents learn that we are here to compete at the highest level. But competing at the highest level, we're not building a robot. We're building the character of the students, of the people that are going to from the beginners.
So tremendously dedicated.
And both of them have been,
Yes.
both of them have been recognized at the highest level at FRC
Yep.
with the Woody Flowers Award,
Even beyond that, Stan received the
Teacher of the Year.
the Prime Minister's Award.
Yes.
Sorry. Chairman's, briefly, quickly, for those watching at home, as a component of the team, what is the chairman's team about?
So chairman's relates to everything that the team does that is not on the field. So it is community outreach, it is community support, it's fundraising, it's getting the word out, it's sharing this information with elementary schools and other secondary schools. It's everything that the robot is not.
Right. So the chairman's team actually never touches the robot, most likely, but has a critical role. And as you said, the chairman's award is actually it's the highest award in FRC. It's even more so than winning worlds or winning a district competition. If you win chairman's, that's really the cream of the crop, and it doesn't involve any of the construction or competition components. Luba, from what you've observed in your first year, what do you see as some key components outside of Drive Team that that students really should be paying attention to?
Outside of the Drive Team, I noticed that from the scouting portion of the team and the audio-visual portion of the team, they provide a lot of support, especially when it comes to after game time, after the tournament, the evening after a day of play, when the team regroups and goes over the video of the day to help improve their strategy, to see what other teams are doing, just to get that extra little bit of edge.
Scouting is like the CIA of FRC robotics.
And it's amazing to
Only
see all
not
these.
clandestine. It's right there. They're transparent.
They're all there sitting in their rows, and then they're, between each game, you see them passing. I'm not even sure what they're passing around, to be honest with you. They're passing their devices around, sharing their information, and then my son who does the video, they're trading videos, get the backup, get this downloaded, get the extra battery. It's good to see how all of this comes to play, because the Drive Team and the scouting team really work together to improve game to game, day to day, competition to competition.
And the scouting team, much bigger than Drive Team too. There's 4 members on Drive. Scouting can have as many as
easily 12.
12, right? So 4 times the size. If my math, no,
3.
I can't do math.
3.
I'm gonna let Tahit do math.
3. So
Depending on the competition, it could be anywhere from 10 to 20.
Yeah, it seems like that. Tahit, what is your perspective on some of the key roles that our students should be paying attention to?
Well, as a parent of a scout, I saw a lot of scouting there. They actually analyze the strength and weaknesses of each team, right? Now, while Drive Team it's fabulous. They are what they are.
Yes.
It's unprecedented, right? But to feed them with all the information, whom to choose, whom not to choose, on what basis they will choose, right? Which one is actually a defense bot, which one is not a defense bot, which one is strong, which one if you push, then you might flip, they will not flip, right? And when my daughter started talking about those things, I'm like looking at her, I'm like, okay, this is not my field, right? But at the end of the day, when we come back clapping, they don't actually come back. They sit, they spend countless hours analyzing all those data so that when it comes to the final, they can actually choose the alliances. And you have to keep in mind, the way the alliances goes, it's not like, okay, you're the best team, so you choose 3. It doesn't work that way. You kind of predicted, I'm going to choose 1, 2, 3. It comes back that you didn't get any of them. Somebody else chose them, right? Which the first pick, we usually do not feel. We always the one who's picking the first one, but the second or third one is always trouble, right? Then they kept on feeding them continuously that, you know what, okay, this one, don't choose this one, right?
Yes.
This is the strength of this. So they are actually cool. But definitely the people who help them build also the robots,
Yes.
it's kind of like a feast. You cannot actually let any of the department or any of the part of the team think that they're actually weak or they're not doing too much. They all are doing excellent work. All of them.
Yeah.
All of them.
I just wanted to piggyback on that. we talk about building the robot. We also have to maintain the robot. And the unsung heroes of the team by far are the pit crew. They don't even get to see most of the competition. They're way back, in some cases, or in another building, sometimes in another state, it seems. They're just so far away. But not only do they maintain the robot, but they also get important intelligence, because you can then find out from other teams, whose robot, which team's robot is not performing well, which team's robot is just made an addition to their robot that's going to improve their case. We also choose, especially when we get to limbs, especially the end of a limbs, we might do something called cheesecaking cheesecaking a robot. And cheesecaking is, the robot may be really good and really strong. We may then add on something. We may cheesecake it. We may add something to that robot that makes them perform differently in eliminations that may provide us with a competitive advantage.
Yes.
Well, who's doing that? That's done in the pit crew.
Yeah.
That's done on the fly, and oftentimes with only a 6-minute timeout in between competition. So, in between matches. So, if you're doing that quickly, you got to have an amazing pit crew, and we do. We always have had a great pit crew.
That's true. So we're seeing importance of scouting, pits, chairmans, drive team, obviously, but
the building team,
the pre-build,
right.
So many different components. So if your student doesn't necessarily find immediately a place to fit in, they will eventually. They'll be pulled into something, and they'll be able to discover whether or not that's their fit. And we were talking about the support within the team for students that are kind of lost and wandering around. Something will gravitate towards them, and they'll find their role. We almost out of time. Yes, are you here to kick us out?
No.
Awesome. Yeah, keep talking. I just wanted, because I botched the last time schedule. I stopped the show 10 minutes early. Transferable skills. Your students come out of this program. John, you've had 3 already that have graduated. 1 more at the end of this year. Not all of them have gone into tech-related industries or post-secondary. 0, in fact. Wow, you have a perfect score. None of them have gone into the tech field. So then, what transferable skills do you think they've taken with them, and have you seen how those transferable skills have helped them in their chosen career fields?
Absolutely, without question.
Yeah.
Even my daughter Anna, who's just going into 2nd year at Ryerson, there's a lot of group work that goes on at Ryerson. She's in radio, television, and so there's a lot of production. She has to work with a team, and so the number 1 transferable skill is team. The number 2 is working under pressure. I don't think any student has any pressure in college or university or going into the work world. There's no pressure out there. It's just easy street. There's no anxiety anywhere.
Sarcasm.
There's no loneliness and isolation. These kids, when they come out of school, when they come out of whatever their respective secondary school, they are ready for the world and whatever the world is going to throw at them. But mostly they are really good at being able to identify their strengths and weaknesses, playing to their strengths, and finding other people that can play to their weaknesses with their own strengths, and finding the very best. And again, that graciousness and professionalism carries them forward too. We've had incidents where kids have gone on and they found themselves in what most people would consider an intolerable circumstance or situation, but through gracious professionalism, they persevere and win the day.
So what are your experiences?
Well, he has no experience.
No experience?
She's in grade 12.
Well,
but don't even ask about Gordon.
You still see, I know, Gordon's going in grade 10, but
whatever.
I'm sure that you have noticed within your child some skills, and you can kind of sit back and go, okay, I can see how that will be a benefit to them wherever they live, regardless of whether it's a tech field or not.
No, it's definitely, we are not even close to John. It's
Right.
like 14 over 2. 12 score ahead of us,
Yes.
right? But the thing is, see, Anushka is in grade 12. She's actually, hopefully, fingers crossed, will pass out this year. And as my whole family, we actually science background, right? For us, life is actually science, right? So at grade 11, when Anushka actually came and said that, you know what, I'm going somewhere else. So I'm like, what do you want to do? So she's like, I want to be in business and art student, right? And this is the first thing my mom said, with due respect, that she will be a painter. I'm like, no, no. Art doesn't mean painting. There's a lot of other things there. There's digital art, right? And my mom is like, what do they do, right? So I'm like, you know what? Calm down, right? We'll actually explain that later. But I actually asked Anushka that from where did you actually get this concept, right? And she came that, you know what? I always like presentation, right? Digital media, analyzing those kind of things, making presentation. I think she's part of the presentation that the chairman awards actually does also, right? So, and I'm like, she's like, you know what? I kind of feel like this is what I want to do. And before I came to you, I actually talked to Megan, right? And Megan is actually part of the Global Business and Digital Art, the program of Waterloo is actually offering. Yeah. She's there. And then I'm like, okay, so what do you know about it, right? And she's like, you know what, these are the things they do, right? These are the hands-on they do actually co-op, they do this, and you know what, this is what I want to be, right? This is what I want to do. And that's how your skill that you think your kids have actually goes to a different direction. Mm-hmm. Just because when you come to the team, it's not only that you are playing with the machine, right? You have to build it, you have to design it, you have to find the strength and weakness of it, right? There is a media team working behind it, right? The presentation, there are public relations, there are administration, there are finances, right? So all those components are actually in the team. And when they're in the team, they slowly start to find out their way. And like you're saying, if there is someone that will be able to fit in, I'm pretty sure if you want to fit in, everyone can fit in the team. Yeah. Right? No one can. Like, there is something to do for everyone the way they like to do it. Yeah. Right? There's always there.
It's interesting that your child's experience was that maybe they were heading on a science technology path, and now they've veered towards something different. Right. And I shared with the first panel that my child is heading in kind of an artistic direction. You know, she was a competitive cheerleader. She wanted to get into graphic artistry, and now has swung towards science and technology. So you never know where they're going to land, but this is really a springboard for them that helps them to really narrow down some of their career choices and their post-secondary school choices. What have you noticed in Gordon? Have you seen some transferable skills and such develop?
I have. A willingness to try new things. Coming from a mostly athletic background to robotics is quite, in my opinion, two different worlds. Yeah. So a willingness to try different things and fully allow himself. Yeah. To be part of it. To push himself. Yeah. So allowing a focus on something other than what he's used to.
You were noting that he was a little shy.
He's until he gets to know someone, he's very shy and not willing to open up.
So I made Gordon be Ray Mulholland's tour guide. Ray Mulholland's one of our trustees, of course, and I didn't know until afterwards when talking to Luba that, oh, Gordon's a little shy. Well, he didn't act it around one of our longest serving trustees. And so you can see that kind of thing is happening already.
Right, so, you know, alongside that, it allows the kids to develop a confidence, you know, when they find something that they're good at on a team that is successful, they develop a confidence that, you know, when I heard from Jeff that Gordon had been given that role, I thought, oh, that could maybe go well or maybe not.
Becky, did it go well?
Great.
There you go. Becky was with the tour as well.
So it's good to see that he's growing in areas like
getting confidence.
Getting
Sometimes
confidence.
Too much confidence, John.
No, I think not too much confidence, because one of the things that FIRST Robotics teaches you is humility. You said that we don't lose very often. I would argue almost the opposite. We lose a lot. We lose individual matches. We've never won the World Championship, which last time I checked means we're 0-13. But we also lose every year amazing students that we think, oh, the team will never be as good as it was. And year by year by year, because these kids have been mentored, they've matured through the process, they bring something new to the team. So the team is not the same. It's not It's not a mosaic, it's a kaleidoscope. It's always changing and always shifting, and it's always improving. The team that we have now would have whooped the team that we first had. But that's only because we've got 14 years of experience going into this.
And even the team now, the students that are in grade 12, that were the rookies in grade 9, a completely different experience over the spectrum of only 4 years.
Well, absolutely, and many of those kids who are in grades 10, 11, and 12 now may have actually been with, or at least acknowledged as part of the team for most of their lifetime. You know, my daughter Sarah is 17. This is in effect her 14th year on the team. So this is all she's ever known is FRC robotics. And that is the culture that we are creating for our kids. It's siblings and its neighbors and its friends and its relatives. It's going to make a glorious new world.
I'm getting this.
Steal a minute.
Okay, 1 minute because I'm getting the wrap it up, Jeff.
30 seconds.
We heard clapping 20 seconds.
30 seconds actually. When Anushka actually started coming with the team, going to the competition and winning, losing, right? Some medals, some not, right? Anushka is the only kid, right?
Yeah.
But what I find out is she influenced a couple of my friends' kids also.
Huh?
And they actually started joining the team. They have they're the Pink Titans, right? And then there are other teams also, right? And my friends kept on calling me, who is like a really little kid, that what I can do. And I'm like, okay, send them to FTC, send them to VecQ, right? Slowly they will start to groom, and they actually started looking for those, right? So this is a different culture we are actually building here. It's not like this is where they're coming and when they're going out, they're not. They're influencing everyone outside also, right?
A different culture that we're building. I love
Yeah.
that. I'm gonna finish by saying the same thing that I did last time, and we have to cover it because we talked about it in the first panel, scholarships. $80 million in scholarships available to alum from FRC robotics teams across the world. It's a shared pool. A lot of them are in the US, but right here in Hamilton, McMaster has $500,000 or so in scholarships available exclusively to members that have participated in the FRC program. And that's invaluable. I'll share it quickly. Met a student in Detroit, was chatting with him. His entire post-secondary career is paid for through multiple scholarships. All he has to do is buy food. And that's an opportunity that our kids, so apply. FirstInspires.org is the umbrella organization, and FirstCanada.org or something, whatever the Canadian one. There's a separate branch for the Canadian specific scholarships, but do go out and investigate those for your kids and apply. That includes the off-season events too. There are scholarships available at things like IRI that can just be life-changing for your students. So look into those, participate in those. Thank you to my panel. Thank you to everybody who stayed for the entire hour. That's fantastic. If you have any questions, I know that our next speaker is beginning soon out in the cafeteria, but if you do have any questions, the parents here would be happy to answer them and to speak to them. So thank you.